Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus.
Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly.
Check.
All right, let's
You
go.
ready?
All right, let's go. I was messing. Well, hello, everybody. Hey, thanks again for joining us on another episode of Father Focus. We are so excited that you have taken a few moments of your time and just hanging out with us. And hey, we would love for you, if you are impacted by this, if you get any value out of this, we would love for you to like, subscribe, hey, and share it with a friend. We're three dads who are going the journey together, learning from each other. Want to tell my partners, what's up? How y'all doing today?
What up? Jermaine, I see you're wearing one of them mediums.
All right, haters love to hate.
Nathan,
Mad
hey, listen, I really do like your shirt, Jermaine. I'm going to start calling you Muscle Man. Come on, can you give us a little quick flex right there? Look, my man is
the right to bear arms, my brother. I believe.
Listen. Hey. Anyone's muscles look big and extra small. Okay.
All right. Well,
all right, Nathan. I know you got an extra large shirt on. Let's see the shirt.
Let's see your
Come
shirt.
on, PP Nady. Come on, man. For all your friends back home, let's see.
I don't want to show it. No one watches this anyway, so I mean,
they watch it. They want to see.
They're going to watch it, and
you're
basically wasting time at this very moment. Are you going to be a good sport?
He's stalling.
All right, come on, Nathan.
I don't want to do it.
You're really just not. You're really not going to show the awesome shirt. It's like a Nacho Libre shirt because he kind of looks like Jack Black a little bit.
It's got a lot of stains on it. It was actually an undershirt that I wasn't planning on wearing in public today.
It's all right.
It's got armpit stains.
Oh, guys, we're going to get a picture of that, and we're going to put it in the link. We're going to do our best. But anyway, listen, I got a quick story I want to tell y'all. Hey, what would you do? What would you do if someone was holding your, let's say, 2-year-old child, and you had no idea who this person is, if they're holding this child in your home? So here's the story.
What Christina would do.
She
would punch him.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Punch them.
No, she wouldn't have punched this lady. Christina, if she's listening to this.
Christina slapped some lady in a public restaurant that tried to touch our kid when they were a baby.
Smacked him.
Oh man, yeah, Christina straight thugging it. I appreciate that. That's what I've always loved about her. Yeah. Okay, so here's the story. So it's probably I think it's a Friday or Saturday. We're off on Fridays. I take Friday and Saturdays off. Cutting my grass. My wife takes a nap. We just had our second kid, and Judah, who at the time he's probably around 2 years old, he's just walking, and we have these terrible doorknobs in our house where they're the levers, right? So all they have to get up and grab it, and they pull it down. I don't know what they're called, but it's just the lever to open the door. And so I thought he was sleeping. The baby, Maggie, was an infant, sleeping as well. And I finished cutting the grass, leave the garage open. And the next thing I know is I took a shower and I got in my bed. I'm laying down, my wife's there, and I'm just kind of relaxing. And all of a sudden I hear something in my living room, bro. And I'm like, did somebody turn the TV on? What the heck? And I lean over, my wife's still there. I'm like, what is happening? So I have a gun in my nightstand. I almost grabbed the gun. I was going to act like I'm Jack Bauer or some sort of Navy SEAL running out there. I'm about to wreck my stuff. And I left it. Thank God. I left it. And I walk into my living room. Bro, there's this person. I have no idea who she is. She is holding my son.
No, sir.
And she looks at me and she says, "Is this your son?" And I'm like, yeah.
He's my son now.
Is this daytime or nighttime? I mean,
this is during the day. This is probably 11, 12 o'clock. And I'm like, yeah, it's my son. Well, she ends up telling me what happened. I left the garage door open like a knucklehead because I didn't think he was going to run out. Well, like I said, he just got tall enough and big enough to open the door, and then he ran right out into the street. This lady is driving down the street. And she sees him in the middle of the road and just stops and picks him up, sees the garage door open, and brings him back inside.
Wow.
How many
Man.
houses did she go to before she came to your house?
No, I have no idea, but I'm like, he could barely talk at the time. I was like,
oh my God.
oh
That's
my
scary.
goodness. And then my
That is
wife
scary.
comes stumbling out like she has, she's like sleeping. I'm supposed to be protecting the house. Well, she just looked
Wait,
at
why
me
were you
like,
guys still in bed? Because you wake up at like 5 a.m. at 11 or noon during the day.
This is a nap.
well, Nathan, when you have kids, most of the time, y'all know we got 5. Anyway, but we had 2 then. Third one was probably on the way, I think, by the timeline there. But anyway,
Okay,
so don't
we're
let
moving-
strangers
we know
in your
what
house
happens.
unless they're returning your kids.
So were you
That's-
sleeping on the couch that night? Is that what you're trying to say? You were on the couch or on the floor or in the garage
I
in a tent? Where did you sleep? Kate
I would
Taylor kicked you
assume I
out.
slept in my bed where I
Okay,
always
she
sleep.
didn't boot you out for that, leaving the kid.
No. Yeah,
Oh.
no, we don't have that kind of deal. There's no booting in our house.
Yeah, we don't.
Anyway.
either.
All right, so want to talk to everybody today about something that is interesting. I think you all will find a lot of benefit, a lot of help from this episode. And so we want to talk about evaluating the culture of our home. And so just to kind of navigate through that a little bit, everybody has a culture. Everybody has their own standards. People have rules. Some people have different rules. Some people think their rules are stupid. No, your rules are stupid. Everybody, it's because we're all unique. And so we have established a culture and kind of, for our purpose to define culture a bit. Culture would be something that is established either passively or intentionally, and it is the way in which your family dynamic operates. Okay, it's the way you function. It is whether or not you have a peaceful culture in your home. There's just kindness abounding, or you have aggression. Mom and dad, they fight all the time, so the kids fight. So then you're establishing culture. And so just a little, just to kind of jump off into this with want to hear a little bit about culture from you guys, your guys' personal culture in your home. But why does culture matter to you guys? Like, what does it matter to y'all?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll start. I just think, it's a great question. When I look at just things biblically, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? The narrative there. And the earth was formless and void. In darkness covered the face of the deep. And it says the spirit of the Lord hovered over the deep. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And then we go in this whole explanation of how God created the heavens and the earth. And we see that in God's created order, and even in the garden, you see God he is intentionally, right? He is creating a culture, and then he does all of that before he even puts man in it. He creates the culture, he makes the environment first, and then he makes the being that's going to live in that environment. And so, that biblical example for me has been, a great something that I've held on to go, okay, this is why creating culture is important. We see God doing it before he makes man. He creates the culture for man. He creates the environment for man, right? And
good.
So, when building the Ark of the Covenant, he gives the blueprint, right? And then his presence comes, right? And so, I think, just biblically, for me as a father, looking at the example of God and just, we've intentionally tried to adopt that kind of that process of creating culture. And that's why I'd say culture is important, is that God did it. He leads it the way in that.
Yeah,
that's really good. I don't know if I've even ever thought about that before. That God in the beginning created culture before he created man. That's powerful. It's really good. Wow,
Yeah.
Jermaine, look at you go.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying. Culture is created by the establishment of certain regulations and rules.
Right.
There's a culture in which we approach the Lord himself.
Yeah.
He demands to be recognized as holy and glorified and honored. And so there's a culture there. We don't go into his presence and blaspheme him, right? Unless we end up like the devils. But anyway, Nathan,
you'll be dead. Yeah.
Nathan, you'll be dead. It's true.
I mean, I've always heard culture defined as observable characters and traits that are unspoken in an environment, right? You think about the culture of Google. Everyone wants to work for Google because not only do you
Not
get
me.
paid well, and well, all right, almost everyone. Um, it's the culture they've created there, right? Like people value what they do. You know, you hear about the rec rooms and the sleeping pods and the free cafeteria and the transit and all the stuff that they do. Like they've been very intentional about creating a work culture that people demand to be a part of, right? People will work and go to school and build their whole resume just to hopefully get considered to work at Google. And so when I think about culture, I think about like when someone walks into my home and when they observe my family from a distance, what do they notice? What do they observe without me telling them anything? Because I think there's these values we say we want to have. Oh, I want my family to get along and I want us to love each other and I want us to want to spend time together and be kind, but our spoken values and our spoken culture can be very different from the actual culture we have in our home. And I didn't realize this, but I remember one day I came home from work and Christina, in a loving way, basically said, Nathan, when you come into the house, the whole atmosphere changes. And I was like, it's better. It's awesome, right? She said, no. She said, no, actually, when you come into home, everyone gets really tense. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, when you walk in the door, whatever you're walking in the house with, you're bringing in with you, and it's affecting everyone else around you. And I didn't realize it, but I think I had kind of been like maybe heavy from work or just kind of been in grind mode. So I come into the house and I just immediately just go right into the spirit and mindset I've already been walking in. And so I was creating a culture in my home where my kids didn't want to be around me. My wife was tense because everyone felt like I better be doing something. I better be working. Otherwise, dad's going to say something. He's going to chew me out because I'm not striving enough. And it was so subconscious. It wasn't something I was intentionally doing. And I realized in that moment, my gosh, like I am creating culture in my home without realizing a performance-based mindset in my family that they better be working when I walk in the door. Otherwise, I'm going to have something to say about that. Yeah. And so I think it's important, like in this conversation, I'm actually really excited about this topic, is we have to evaluate like, what is our family feeling on a regular basis? You know, like what is the environment of our home? And when people come in from the outside, like what do they sense? What do they feel? Because we know this to be true. Culture shapes people. Like culture shapes people. The culture you have in your home right now is shaping your kids. And whatever culture you have, that's creating the type of people that they'll be and the culture they're going to carry with them. And so I think this is critical that we realize that as parents, as fathers and mothers, we create the culture we want our kids to carry with them into the world, right? Yeah. Like what you brought up, Jermaine, I think that's so powerful. God created that perfect environment in Genesis. And then what did he say? What was his mandate to Adam and Eve? He said, take this concept and spread it throughout the earth. So continue to spread that through the rest of the world. How is that not any different for us as parents to do the same thing with our kids?
Yeah. Nathan, that's great. And, you know, when I think about culture as well, obviously it kind of mentioned, a little bit ago that it's something that is creative either passively. So that was something in your own personal life that you were doing passively because, you've been functioning that way, at work, you're hitting the grind. It's just, and it's just who you were in that moment. And not even to say that you were doing something negative. It's that you were actually changing something in a way that you did not want to do. Like it's not good for us always to be barking at our kids. However, there are absolutely moments that we need to bark at our kids, right?
Can we get a bark?
But go for it. After you show me your awesome shirt. How about that?
Well, you guys are, when you're talking about culture there, Jeremy, it was so reminded me, when Nathan was sharing also that he was, it's important to realize that we're always engaging in culture, when we go to work, when we go out to the store. And Nathan made a great point, and you're pointing it out, is that we don't realize oftentimes that we're leaving one culture and engaging in another one. We don't take the time to
Yep.
disengage from the culture. We're still plugged in. Like, even though we've left, that culture has left its mark on us. And if we don't take the time as fathers, I'm guilty of it many times, of not disengaging from that culture, my mind and my heart, and taking the time to re-engage in the culture intentionally and where I'm going. I too can do what Nathan did and just start coming in and just, without realizing, superimposing another culture on our culture and then suppressing the culture that we desire to have.
Well, I think anybody listening to this right now would all affirm that I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of entering into a situation and not being sensitive to it, especially men, because, God created us to subdue things. They created us to lead, to be in charge. And obviously, think about it. We're towering presences, even if you're not a huge man as far as, Shaquille O'Neal standard, you are still enormous compared to your children, right? You are intimidating just by the sheer fact that you're taller, you're bigger, you have a deeper voice, you're different from your tender wives. And so
giant muscles.
And giant muscles over there, and medium shirts, and stained up shirts on the other end. But the fact is that we really do need to be intentional. That's what it's about. About being intentional about what it is that we are doing and that what it is that we're creating. So, just curious. What was the culture of like when you all were growing up? For me, I was raised in a godly home. My parents were by no means perfect. They would tell you that they would sin, they would repent to us. Both of my parents never had a problem with apologizing, saying that they missed it and what they did. But both of them feared the Lord. They really did. They raised us to go to church. We were in church, when the lights were on at church, the Quintinis were there, and so everything else was secondary to the Lord. Literally, there was nothing that was supreme over serving God and His church. And so, and I'm a product of that. I'm a product of parents who love the Lord and, kind of shaped my future. But as far as you guys, what was the culture like when you all grew up?
For me, the culture was, you guys have heard a little bit of my story, single parent family. My mom dated men in and out, different men. And the culture was somewhat unpredictable and turbulent. And so, didn't always feel safe, didn't always feel security, a lot of angst, a lot of tension and anxiety, and at times just outright just survival. And so, for me, I really wanted to create a sense of stability for my kids. Responsibility is high for me. If you do strength finders, and so for me, it's always been to make sure not just my kids, but any kids are safe. I naturally walk when I engage with people's kids. I'm looking to make sure they're safe. It doesn't have to even be my kid. Like when I'm with your kids, Jeremy, and when they're around people, I'm just naturally looking at I have this propensity to just say, okay, I want to make sure they're safe. And so, I've tried to create safety and security, not a false security, but just stability and consistency. And so that's been very important to me because growing up, it was very erratic at times. And my mom did the best she could at times, and it wasn't all bad, but it was challenging and, stressful at times. And so for me, that's what's influenced me as a father now, is just really wanting my kids to know that they're safe, that they can be vulnerable, right? They can fail even, and they can, try different things and risk. And so that's how I was influenced by my upbringing. It wasn't quite like yours. We went to church, all the while going to church. And I thank God for that, for those little seeds that were planted. But yeah, it really I really saw also firsthand just how important the lack of a father or the presence of a father is. I can tell you, just for those of you out there who feel like, I'm not making much of a difference. You are. Just your presence, just being present. And when you're present, be present, but just your presence being there, like as Jeremy was saying earlier, it's huge. And so for me, again, just the safety and the stability is important.
Jermaine, let me ask you this, in the climate that we're in right now, obviously as a black man, I remember you telling me, maybe you could speak to this a little bit about the culture in your home as far as, like some racial things. Like I know you have been harassed for being Black, but how did your mom like talk to you about that, and then or going into church? Like how did any of that come into play from being an unsaved young man and then getting saved? Like is there anything there that you could kind of
So for me, grew up in the deep South in Alabama, and
where in Alabama?
It's called Winfield. It's like it's in the country, northwest Alabama. It's a blip.
Okay.
My grandfather and my grandmother were in a coal mining community called Carbon Hill. It's even smaller, and there was a lot of racial hostility. Just tension. I remember growing up, the Ku Klux Klan would march in our little town. The skinheads would drive through and be shooting at people. There's things that I didn't even told some of you guys don't know this because I've just never. It wasn't until recently the Lord began to have me. Okay, time for you to start sharing some of your story, because a lot of it, He'd healed my heart of it, and I've moved on. But in the times that we're in, I have a reference point to help bring some balance. And so, so for me, it was growing up, there was a tension, and there was a lot of, for my grandmother, there was suspicion. And, I was just saying, even as, one of the things, it's good, the safety piece, but it's also bad because even in what we tell our kids, my friends who were white or, their parents would say, go have fun when they would leave. And mine would say, be careful. And even you can even hear it in some of you. If you watch, you're dealing with kids of different ethnic groups, you'll hear different verbiage, even the small things. And I thought, man, I'm trying to change myself, more to say, have fun and not be careful, because we err on the side of, careful. And so, for you growing up, again, that was what it was for me. My mom, she saw when I got born again. I mean, God began to just like I was born again. Like I was reading the Bible, I was praying. And it really was like a jolt to my family. They were like, what's happening? And they were suspicious, but slowly but surely, man, God had his hand on my life, began calling me out of that, called me to forgive. And I remember having conversations with those in my church and my family about reconciliation and loving your neighbor. And 1 John, how can I say I love God and not love my brother? So, there was this whole metamorphosis taking place in my heart. And again, some of that, you're just speaking to what you were saying, is that that's some of the differences. It was that, in the midst of all that, the hostility and some of the tensions. Do
you, sorry to interrupt.
Go for it. You're fine.
Do you still feel like, obviously with your family and your kids, do you still feel the effects of that old culture on you today?
I was going to ask him the same. I was going to ask him the same exact question.
What
I think there's a lot of people, like I was fortunate like you, Jeremy, to grow up in a 2-parent home. Good parents took care of me. But I would say that's not the norm, or at least it's split down the middle. And I feel like there's probably there's probably a lot of people tend to perhaps experience more like Jermaine than do me or you, and they're probably still feeling the effect of their culture. So I was going to ask the same question, like, have you found that stuff to linger? How have you had to work through that? Some of those things.
Which parts of it? Just the fatherlessness?
Any of it, either fatherlessness or
absolutely.
Or racial, and I just jumped on that just because of like the way our culture is dealing with racial things right now. But how, from the BC days, but from before you were saved or just younger, and it's not even a saved issue. It's that you're a man.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look black or white, like right.
Yeah.
But now that you have a family, are there still those things in the back of your mind, or how do you?
Yeah, sometimes there are. So if it's due to the absence of a father, I mean, I'm doing things that they weren't done to me. Like it's like, I'm wrestling with my kid, and I'm having to remind myself, because the responsibility, again, for me, the lack thereof was such a big deal. I remember I was little. I wanted a dad. I remember being 8 years old. Mom, I want a dad, 9 and 7, 8, 9. For whatever reason, I had a desire, and I believe every child does, to have a desire to have a father. I didn't even know what that was, minus what you see on a TV show. But God gave me this innate desire for a dad. And I remember just the failure, the men coming in and out, failing. And so I grew up thinking, man, I'm going to be a failure. This is just what it is. I'm looking around, and there were those that would look like me that were being good fathers were few and far between. And I just struggled. I remember struggling early on, but it also later when I got born again, God had to deal with that phobia and that insecurity and that fear and that rejection and forgiving my father. So there are times even now being born again, that I can, there's still scars, right? I've been healed, but there's still a scar there. And I have to navigate through, through that part of my story, my journey for my kids. So there are things that rise up in me, even still now, that I'm like, man, I have to remember, enjoy, Jermaine, enjoy your kids. Because again, responsibility, they're not property. You know what I'm saying? They're people, and it's just different things that I have to struggle through just because of wanting them to have different than what I had, wanting them to see different than what I've seen. And I can be hard on myself. I think more than anything, I can be really hard on myself, so much so that I'm not enjoying my time with my kids. Yeah. So I have to constantly remind myself, okay, Jermaine, because it's not a fear, but it's just a consciousness of, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Okay. Nathan, what about you? As far as growing up, what was some of the culture like in your home, in the Arsenault residence over there in Kenner?
Yeah. Just quickly, I mean, I was really blessed. I was really fortunate. I think everyone can look at their life and say, oh man, there's probably things my parents could have done better, or I would have done differently. But my dad worked long, hard hours to put us through private school, because in New Orleans, especially where me and Jeremy grew up, the public schools looked like they were closed down. That's how bad the quality of the school.
That is a private school education's view. My school, East Jefferson, was amazing.
Oh my God. Anyway, but I mean, they grinded, they worked,
those
they worked hard.
Snobs. Jermaine, come on, man.
All right, bougie.
I drove a broke down minivan that literally the doors would fly open while I was driving.
I didn't have a car. You should have been grateful.
Yes, you did. He had that little green probe or whatever it was. Anyway,
that's after they got rid of his. He had a driver before that. He didn't tell you what he had before that. The driver taking him to school.
Pinkies up. But no, I think one of the good things my parents really did is they taught us the value of hard work and responsibility. So when we were 15, 16, it was the earliest you could work. They were basically like, listen, we know you want certain things that we're just not going to pay for. You want to go out to eat all the time? We're not paying for that. There's a meal at home if you want to eat it. You want those clothes? We're not paying for them. You have to buy them yourself. So we started working very early. I was probably the first of most of my friends who had a job. And I didn't just have like I see kids nowadays, oh man, I'll work so much. They're working 4 hours a week. I worked full time pretty much all the way through high school. Actually my first job was with Jeremy. We worked 25 hours a week. And then from there was 30, 35 hours. I worked a lot in high school, but it was because my parents instilled, oh man, what the glory days. We'll have to tell that story, some of those stories one day. But I think they did a great job of teaching us independence. So now me and all my siblings, we're all hard workers. We all excel in our careers and fields that we're in. We're very driven. But I would say one of the unintentional part of the culture of our family is we're not close, because we're all very much so independent and self-driven and self-focused, that it created this culture in our home where we were gone much more than we were there. And so we're not close to each other. Even now, me and my siblings don't talk a ton. So I think there's unintentional consequences of the culture you create. There's some good and there's some bad.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What is the culture like in your homes now? So obviously the way we were raised obviously shapes our future. whether they are scars or whether they are things that have put muscles on us, right? And they have the positive things, like Nathan, you're talking about hard work and. But what's the culture like right now in your home? And are there places where you're failing? Where are you winning? What exactly is going on in your lives? And I'll go ahead and go first. And I'll say, one of the places that I realized where I was actually failing is my kids go to school. Like I said, I get the great privilege of bringing my kids to school every morning. I love doing it. We have time to talk about the Lord. We sometimes I tell them little short stories, all kinds of different things. And I love that time. I take 3 of them, and we have to leave my house about 7:50. Well, they wake up at 7:00, and so I found myself. And Nathan knows this. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a guy who likes things on time. I like things quick. I move fast.
He's very anal. He's very anal about time.
Yes, that's true. Just make sure if we say we're going to start at 3:00, let's start at 3:00, right? If you're arriving at 2, you're late.
At 2:50.
No, that 2:50 is great. Yeah. But so I started rushing. I started noticing I'm rushing my kids. And you want to talk about culture. The way I would have to push them was with aggression in order to get them, because they're waking up at 7:00, right. 7:10, 7:15 by the time I'm getting them, food ready, and then they're getting I'm having to push them. I'm like, come on, guys, hurry up, go brush your teeth. We got to brush your hair. And I'm rushing them. And then I start noticing they're rushing each other. Like the whole thing. And my wife is getting stressed out. Like it's just like you said earlier, Nathan, like Christina told you, hey, like you're changing all this when you're coming in, but I'm starting the day out pushing people. And they're supposed to they go to a Christian school, and they're supposed to go to this school and, have a sense of calmness and obedience to their teacher. Well, I'm like amping them up in a negative way,
right.
And so that's something that I was like, and then I had to really recalibrate after I noticed it. I'm like, all right, I need to not do this. So honestly, what I did was 15 minutes. I'm like, I got to get them up 15 minutes earlier. And it just liberates us so much more with just a little bit more time.
Yeah, I'd say the culture for our home, I'll highlight a good thing and then something that we're still working on. One of the amazing things that Christina has done. So my wife sings, she writes music, she leads all the music and worship at our church. And so, that's something she naturally does. She spends time in the morning singing and worshiping God, and the girls have observed that. And so now, I mean, if you come over our house, which I think Jeremy was just there a few months ago, they are singing all the time. And they're not just singing Disney songs or like their favorite movies, Frozen 2. So yeah, they're singing that, but they're now writing and singing their own songs about God. That's like awesome, just dude. On their own, that's just awesome. Naturally. And so I always wanted a house that was filled with worship, that I wanted us to be a family that glorified God. And it's happening because my wife has created a culture home where we value that. That's what's playing in the background. That's what she's singing. That's what she's singing with the girls. One of the girls' favorite songs is a song Christina wrote called He Did It All. And they sing it all the time. And they mess up all the lyrics, but it makes it even better.
That's awesome.
It's just something that she's done a really good job of saying, hey, this is who we are as a family. And I would be very surprised if my kids were not doing something similar to Christina when they're older, which I think is really cool. But I would say one of the negative things is I think because of my personality, I'm very driven, and I want to succeed. I want to get ahead. I want to make an impact in my lifetime, that I can put very heavy expectations on the people closest to me. Like the closer you are to me, the more expectation I have on you, because I think I see you as an extension of me. And so one of the things I realized, I was sitting in this conference listening to this guy talk about, if we don't know our identity, then we will instinctively, out of our own insecurity, parent our kids. And so part of the reason I'm so driven is because there's an insecurity in me about not being enough or failing or not making the impact I want. So that drives me, right? That's not a good thing. Without realizing it, I was creating the same performance mentality on my kids, where because of my own insecurity, I felt like I needed to push them to be successful too. and that success was defined as excelling in this or doing good at that. So I'd see like these triggers, like they're playing softball and they're not good, and I'd try to take them out to practice and they don't want to learn, and I'd get like frustrated because I'm like, I want them to be good at things, and I'm pushing them in something that maybe they shouldn't ever be good at because it's just not their strength. But it's like something inside of me is like, I need them to be successful. I feel successful. You see how jacked up that is?
Yeah,
I didn't even realize it was a part of like my mindset and the culture I was creating in my home. And so I was like, Christina, and I was praying about it. I was like, God, I need you to help me to not put my own insecurities and fears on my kids and drive them to live their whole life striving to be something that they already are. Like they already are loved. They already are successful. They already are people of significance and value. And they don't need to, I don't want them to spend their whole life striving for something that they already have. And so that's something that I've been very intentional about, like not putting these unrealistic expectations and not pushing my kids to an unhealthy level. And actually, I feel like God kind of helped me see, set expectations with your kids, not for your kids. Like sit down together and say, what is it that you want to accomplish? You know, when it comes to your school, I know that's one area for parents that they always struggle because most kids don't care about school, don't enjoy school, whatever it is like sitting down with your kids and saying like, what's your goal for this semester? And then talking that through with them versus saying, you better get straight A's or you're grounded for a month. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we arbitrarily put those expectations on our kids and set them up to fail. So that's something I'm starting to practice now with my kids. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think, you know, I think as you were sharing, and if we're honest, every parent and every father must admit we all have insecurities. That's just it. We all have insecurities. For me, with my kids,
it's your tiny muscles.
No, my lack of hair. You know, I saw firsthand. I know one of the things, you know, I found myself doing was I'm big on wanting to be thankful and wanting to be grateful for things, because a lot of things that my kids are enjoying, I did not have. You know, my dad wasn't in my life. There was no family vacations. There wasn't a lot of time together with my father. There wasn't a lot of teachable moments. He wasn't at my games, you know. And when I feel like my kids are taking that for granted, I found myself getting frustrated, or if they would respond to me in a certain way. And I would just think, I would even say, like, guys, I would never, what you guys are doing, I would never do to my kid, my parents. Like, I would wake up, you know, on the floor, you know, like, you know, and get the backhand something. But I found myself, the Lord whispered to me one day, he's like, Jermaine, like, you got to stop saying that, because you're frustrated with your upbringing. You're not frustrated with them. You're comparing it to how you were raised.
Wow.
And that wasn't all normal. They did the best they could. But in your comparison, you're getting angry with them and frustrated because he says they don't know that. They're never going to know what you know, because they're not you. And because they have you and you have me, your children are growing up in an entirely different environment. I found myself comparing the two and saying, you're ungrateful, you know, and maybe they were being ungrateful, but it was heightened and it was maximized because of my own inward frustration, because of my own inward, like, I wish I had what they had. And instead of rejoicing because they have it, I found myself lamenting and being frustrated because I felt like they were taking it for granted. Does that make sense? And the Holy Spirit just checked me. He's like, you have me. So no, they're not going to realize it. And yes, they're going to take things for granted, but so do you, you know. And so just really checking me in my own insecurities and reminding me, hey, like, it's relax. It's going to be okay. You know, like, you know, deal with your own insecurity, deal with your own frustrations with your upbringing, and take it easy on your kids, because they have you, they can be ungrateful. You know what I'm saying? In a way, they're not going to know what you know because they're not you. So
right. Yeah, but then again, like you said, that gratitude that you're striving for, and of course your wife, that's something that they're going to catch, even if they don't get it when you tell them one time. Dude, one of the more frustrating things for me, and I think every parent would recognize it, is that you have to tell your kids multiple times to do something like, hey, from now on, don't leave your cup on this table. Well, guess what? 2 minutes later, the cup's on the table and you're like, wait, didn't you say to put it? I'm like, no, I told you not to. So it's like we're conditioning people, our children, to grow in a way that we are culturalizing. We are culturalizing them to be like us. And we're obviously doing our best by God's grace to be molded into the image of Jesus Christ. And so that's what we're here discussing today, culture. And so thank you all for sharing your thoughts on your own personal lives, your family, your own stories. Anybody have a quick 15-second recap on what we discussed today? Nathan, you want to go first?
I don't have a recap, but I do have something that I think would be important for us to evaluate out of listening to this as a practical step. Why don't you sit down with your spouse and your kids and say, what does our home feel like to you?
Yeah.
And I think that'll give you a really clear picture of the culture that's within your home. You know, your kids might say it's fun, or it's really boring, or it's really intense when you come home, Mom, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then based on that, then build a blueprint for what type of culture you want to have, and then intentionally go after it.
Good.
So what does it look like? And then where are you going? That's the that would be one follow-up question I would ask. Where do you want to go? What's the goal for your kids? What's the goal for you as a father? What's the goal for you as a mother? Anyway, Jermaine?
Yeah, you know, it's so good. Culture is seen, felt, and heard, right? You see it, and it's you hear it, but it's also felt. And like I love what Nathan said. Like, what are you feeling, right? Perception is not what we're wanting. It's how they're perceiving. And so it's so important to involve your family into those kind of questions, into creating culture, and don't take it personal. I would say, because it can feel very personal. People say, don't take it personal, but man, you know, being a parent, it feels so personal. I've told my kids, that hurt my feelings, you know, when you said that. I've had to learn to be vulnerable like that. And they're like, I didn't know your feelings ever got hurt. And I'm like, yeah, they do. I just can't go in the corner and you know, and mope. I got to go to work. But I'm just even, you know, cultivating a culture of like, hey, dad's not unbreakable. That bothered me. And this is why, and I should have responded this way instead of that way. And so, what to Nathan's point of just, you know, don't take it personal as you're evaluating the culture, and they say it's boring, or you talk too much, or I don't like this. You know what I mean? Don't take it personal. It feels so personal. I mean, does it not? It feels so vulnerable. Just don't.
Yeah.
And just you know, move forward and thank them for it.
Yeah. So. At the end of the day, we've got to realize that our children are kids, right? They're kids, even if they're 17 years old. They are kids. They don't know anything. They don't know what they think they do know. And we as parents are helping shape, guide, and direct their lives to a particular end, to a particular goal. And so, hey, I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast. Again, if you have been blessed by hearing this, if you have enjoyed this, I would just kindly ask that you would share this, let some people know about it, subscribe, and we look forward to hearing you again next time. Thank you all so much.